So, welcome to this podcast about AI, a podcast where we look at some of the questions our students have asked, and in it we ask our professional friends, alumni, and experts in general to give them some answers. So, today I'd like to introduce Jamie Barrett. Do you want to give yourself a quick introduction, Jamie?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Sean. So my name's Jamie Barrett. I'm currently working as an exterior design manager in Shanghai at Dongfeng Automobile. And today I've been invited on this podcast by Sean to kind of give the kind of lowdown of how AI is being used in the industry thus far. So yeah, it's an opportunity for me to just tell people the kind of realities and the kind of the open truth about how AI is being used in the industry.
Absolutely fantastic. Okay, so without further ado, let's just dive straight in. Will it replace humans in studios?
So will it replace humans in studios? From my point of view, definitely not. I think humans are still the kind of key factor in design decision making, whether it's humans looking at other humans' work or it's humans looking at AI generated content. Only a human can decide really what's good design or good proportion.
Yeah.
So it's based on humans' experience or their understanding or developing of design trends. AI cannot understand it by itself. So it only creates stuff. It has no metric to understand what is good and what is bad. So I do say yet, because you never know what might be coming. But I still think that human endeavor for understanding what is good design is the true meaning of what is the right choice to make within design. So that cannot be really quantified by an algorithm or a digital footprint. So our sense of what is right and wrong is still the key decision in what's the true meaning of design and how it should move forward. And also the sense of genuine passion.
Our next question. What new design roles might emerge as AI evolves?
So what new design roles might emerge as AI evolves? So in my personal opinion, I don't think right now there will be necessarily new design roles that will emerge. However, the individual designer themselves will be expected to take a lot more control over all aspects of the delivery. So, for example, we used to rely on other teams to be making visualizations, videos, and these kind of things, and other high quality VR renderings. So we used to do our work and then maybe hand it off to another person, to their skill set. But actually now using AI, we can more collectively do these things ourselves. We don't have to heavily rely on another team. We can use AI to create those things for us. So actually before we would make sketch, make data, and then that data would then be made into a video. But actually now you can cut out the data completely and just make a video based on your sketch or your idea. So actually those things that were outsourced before now can be done by yourself through the power of AI. So basically you have more complete control over your delivery to the final project delivery, basically. So, even, as I said, even things like making rough proportion data based on your sketch can now be done using AI to 3D software. So basically it's alleviating a lot of pressure off other departments that can be done easily now by the designer themselves. So basically what used to be a multiple discipline process or multiple department process now can become a single designer's job. It leaves other departments to focus on their actual tasks at hand, for projects that are maybe already developing and not in that initial design phase. So it's more about initial control, and when that's been decided upon, then those departments can have more effect on the final output of the project. But initially it's more up to the designer now.
That's a fantastic insight. How might AI reshape the tools designers use today?
So how might AI reshape the tools and designers use today? So essentially jobs that used to take days or even weeks, from my experience, can now be actually done in mere minutes. It's kind of a very scary thing to know that what used to take you so long can now be done so short in such a short time. But actually it's a kind of an alleviating thing. It means that you have less pressure to do these mundane tasks and you can really crack on through your design work a lot quicker. So basically, before, maybe you spent a long time shaping your front 45-degree view of your sketch. You finished it, you got it all looking nice. And then there was the kind of pressure of, okay, now I've got to turn that into the side view. And then now I've got to do the rear view. So there was always that kind of feeling of I've got to do this step by step before I can get to the final, the full range of images or the full range of pictures that you've made. But actually now using AI, I can just say, okay, I have this side view or I have this front 45 view, and I could just ask AI to make that picture for me. Now, maybe it's not correct, but it still has saved me a dramatic amount of time where I can just adjust the proportions, adjust the surfaces based on my understanding, but not spend hours and hours redrawing, re-rendering, and doing everything. So in that sense of things, it's really allowed us to focus more on design and less on those laborious tasks. And the same thing goes for maybe if you had to readjust the proportions slightly, you can basically maybe even ask AI, hey, this car is too long. Can you make it shorter? This car is too low. Can you make it taller? Or, I want to make I think the best thing is if you say, I want to make a wagon from this car, or I want to make a box like a van from this car. You can just ask it and it can really quickly create that for you. So it's more about a speed thing, which is making our other tools more about refining something rather than creating something from scratch. This kind of thing has really helped our current tools be reshaped by AI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's about speed thing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember all the time we'd spend time doing underlay drawings.
Yeah, exactly. So it says again, I think it's all about how a designer plays with the AI. Traditional workflows are slower and need a lot of iteration. AI workflows give a strong foundation and require less human adjustment. So tools are more intertwined with AI now, but AI is doing more heavy lifting. So with rendering and stuff, AI is doing that now. But we are just tweaking. So we still use Photoshop to modify images, but we don't spend a long time rendering images from the beginning. We don't do a lot of layering and, Photoshopping, and we do a lot of adjustment based on an image already created. Because in the end, sometimes it's better than what a human could create. So why not just save the time and modify the image in the beginning? I still think it's important for designers to understand what they are seeing, but in the end, if you understand it already, you can modify it accordingly. Yeah, and again, another way is that we make Blender models because we want to be creative, but we don't really use Blender rendering anymore. We will make the model and then use AI just to render it, because it's more important about the design rather than spending a long time learning how to render stuff in Blender. Yeah.
That's an amazing insight. We've recently started using a bit of ISCOM to do that. I've got plain shaded models, and then just gave it a model like a reference, saying, "Well, make it look like that. Use that livery. Add that driver beside it."
Exactly. That's basically what we're doing in the industry as well. It's exactly the same. Exactly the same. There's no difference.
Awesome. Will AI make design more accessible? Or more competitive?
So will AI make design more accessible or more competitive? So for sure, from what I have noticed from the last 3 to 4 years about AI is that it's actually making things more accessible. Because, what used to take years of practice, years of learning, years of understanding about, growing up with cars, growing up understanding what cars are, is actually being, and also it being interested in car design is being opened up to a larger audience. So years of practice, in essence, sometimes has been boiled down to pressing some buttons. I don't want to scaremonger, I said, but it kind of has, whereas before you had to know how to draw something, you had to know how to render it, you had to understand light, you had to understand shadow. Now AI is all it's incorporated, so it's understanding how to do that, and you don't have to understand. So in that sense, things, yes, have become more accessible, but true designers, will be able to understand and to be able to distinguish what is good AI and what is generic AI. So this is the real, what you used to be able to understand was a good sketch and what was a bad human sketch. It's the same for what is a good AI sketch and what is a bad AI sketch. It's the same thing. So the threshold for entering looks higher, in terms of the quality, because everybody's quality went up, but actually from the people really judging it, it's almost the same, because you understand what is the threshold of good and what is better. Just as it was before, you understand what it is now. So yes, I think it's a good thing that people can express themselves more, but it doesn't change the fact that the industry still wants the best. Their
Yeah.
standards have not lowered down, just as in any designer's standards have not lowered down. They will always push themselves to be better. So, as I said, it's a kind of a relative shift with the technology, but us as humans, we will not be suckered in by these images, because we know if we can create them, anybody can create them. So therefore, we want everything to always be better. So design in this sense has been shifted into a higher space where we can sift through the mud and know what is still good, this kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there's the head of education at Viscom. She recently wrote a piece on LinkedIn about, I think it's not the exact title, but it's about seeing through the slick.
Yes, exactly.
Because we are presented with a lot of very high quality glossy images, which we used to be famed for.
Yeah, yeah,
You'd
yeah,
see it in the
yeah,
studio, wouldn't you? Someone who
exactly.
produces the best rendering is like, wow, they're the best
Yeah,
designer.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
You know,
Never me,
but
never
that's
me.
kind of, is that a thing now? No, it probably
Yeah,
isn't a thing, as you
yeah,
say. Now
not really.
everyone
Yeah,
can do it, and now
yeah.
it's about which is the best design now, you know?
Exactly, because now you
Yeah.
see through it and you're not judging the image anymore. You're really
Mm,
focusing on what you're seeing, not what you're being shown, it's what you're seeing, this kind of thing. So yeah.
absolutely. Superb. What design skill matters in an AI driven future?
So what design skills matter in an AI driven future? So as you can probably tell by my age, I've started my career with pencils, markers, Photoshop, this kind of thing. I've gone from analog to digital, and I've really gone headfirst into this AI thing. So I think I'm pretty good for understanding what does this transition mean and how will it move into the future. So I think truly, as we just said on the previous question, is to see through the mud of the image. What are you really seeing? Don't be suckered in by a beautiful image. I think it's very easy to see something that looks polished and beautiful and not really judge the design. You're judging the image quality. So actually, I really applaud anyone to really judge the design, not the image, because that's the true meat of the what we're trying to do. The image is for non-design people. The what you're really looking at is for the design people.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to know when something's truly fresh or good design, or pushing forward, not doing the same. And don't be bowled over by the image. The quality of the image should not cloud your ability to judge a good design. I still really think, of course, every day I see hundreds of AI images. It's not a joke. Many of them created by my own self. But actually, when I see people who have a genuinely creative mind and can do something super new, super fresh, even if it's this tiny doodle, this tiny thing, that is more powerful than any AI image could be. An AI created design could be. Now, when that person makes that image or has that idea and then can use AI to enhance that idea, that is the true how to say the melding of two ideas. The human creativity, the AI together. Then those things come together. That's a very powerful workflow. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think when you rely too heavily for the AI to create, you kind of end up with kind of generic things, and then maybe when you end up doing too much creative stuff, it's not really appealing to non-designers' eyes because they can't really understand the content you're drawing. But if you put them two together, that's a really powerful workflow for a lot of people to understand what you're trying to do. So um yeah, I see a strong trend now, people doing human-made design, which is very creative, but rendered by AI. And this for me is a very good workflow because I can instantly see it's not AI, and I know it's a human created it, but an AI rendered it. So I think humans have this ability to create amazingly, So I think they just need to show it. They need to show it more convincingly. So that's what AI can really help. So using AI, showing their ideas, for me as a design manager, when I can see someone's creativity and they genuinely value it, that's how I know the power of AI has boosted their idea. So I think this truly still means that uh, genuine creativity and genuine design understanding or genuine pushing forward is still extremely important in this kind of day and age. With everybody shifting their eye to AI, actually being that one person who is creative and using AI makes you far above the rest. So I think that's really important. Yeah.
I think this is really interesting. It kind of mirrors some of the research that's happening at the moment, especially around the world of AI and sovereignty of the mind. I know it sounds a bit sort of highty-flighty, but they do say that someone who uses and entangles the power of AI with their thinking
For sure.
becomes exponentially more powerful rather than someone who uses it to replace or to do a job, if that makes sense. They don't sort
so
of
much. Yeah, I agree
expedite
so
it, or
much.
they don't sort of employ AI to do something. They use it to empower
Harness.
their own
Yeah.
thoughts, and they remain sovereign in their own mind,
Yeah.
and they, almost remain sane, to be honest. But yeah,
Super
they
true.
also are irreplaceable at that
Yeah,
point.
for sure. It's like you're just using it to you're using it to expedite your thoughts further.
Yes,
You're not
yeah,
using it,
yeah, yeah,
you're not betrothed to the AI. You're actually using it to expel
yeah,
your thoughts and go
exactly.
further. So
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah,
makes a lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
sense.
It makes it's a complete alignment with that kind of
Yeah.
thinking there, which is absolutely fantastic to see.
Yeah.
How should design education adapt to AI advancements? What risks do AI bring to the design process?
Okay. So
Maybe two
how
questions
should
in
yeah.
one there a bit, but yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So how should design education adapt to AI advancements and kind of what risks does AI bring into this design process? So um I think as my true belief that being a designer for I think it's over 15 years now professionally, that actually the core skills that people still need to understand is still sketching and understanding three dimensions. Those are still very much needed. I think that's just a core principle of every designer they need to know. And also understanding car proportions, volumes, those things really can never be replaced. I think just as in every field you're in, you really need to understand what you're looking at and what you're trying to do. Those are your core foundations of anything you try to do. So, but when it comes to design education, I believe it should adapt to help design students understand more about what AI can do and how they can kind of supplement their skills. I think supplementing skills is still, don't let it overtake their skills and become dependent on it, but allow it to support their skills and further elevate their work. Um, so, core of designers' work should still be creation. Maybe less laborious rendering, less laborious time doing like very menial tasks. But that means because you have less time to do rendering because it can be done for you, you can spend more time creating what you want. You can spend more time on the groundwork and let the end result be done by AI basically. So I do believe that human creation is most important. The industry knows what AI software is out there and what it can do. So focusing on creativity is more present than ever. You know, just because it's new to the people who come to the university, it's already old to those people who are using it in the industry. So I don't say we're steps ahead. I'm not saying that, but I mean, we're used to seeing it on such a mass scale that it gets boring to us. So actually, we want to see genuine creativity that will shine even more these days. So yeah, so focusing creativity, and also then another kind of aspect is how you use AI to showcase your creative idea. That's also a very important thing, I think. So, I see AI every day, as I said, so I can see what AI is and I can see what's human created. So for me, seeing more focus on the human and then the AI boosting is a very important thing. So you cannot really fool anyone by using AI and saying it's your own. We will always know this kind of thing. So yeah. Basically, the risks that come with this is that there are numerous risks. I believe the ability to manipulate others' work and kind of change it so much that it's a little bit unrecognizable, it is something that happens. People take a sketch, they put it into AI, it changes it, but it keeps the same proportion, maybe changes the design. So it's a bit like you're using standing on someone else's shoulders, whereas you're not really doing the groundwork yourself, which is obviously considered wrong. So it's best to be careful when you do that, because it can always come back to bite you on the heels, if that happens. So try to do things yourself, and when you use AI to make your work better, still judge your work and know, is it good enough, this kind of thing. So, and that will still help you to improve. So don't try to rip off other people's work. So try to be creative with it and create genuinely new things is also important. Judging new things is also important. So also, again, another problem with AI is that if everyone's using it, the ability to create the same thing also can happen. It's not an unknown thing that it can happen. If one person in this company is typing something, another person in this company is typing something, if you only have a set amount of data from which you're working from, it's very likely that a similar thing can happen. So it's just because what you created looks good to you doesn't mean that someone else in another place hasn't already created it. I've seen it happen. I've seen several designers almost create the same thing in the same studio, or it's kind of scary. So always be aware of what you're creating. So there will be incidents like this, and maybe there'll be turning points in the industry that will happen. Maybe there'll be some concept cars, some show cars that you go, oh, that's extremely AI, or that's very similar to that person's concept car. It can happen, because as humans, we get bowled over by the image. We struggle sometimes to think about what is the right thing to do. So, as I said, using AI now inside the company, it's all internal and wonderful. But as soon as we see something else that comes out that's even remotely similar, that's where we go, oh, we got bowled over by the image, and we should be more wary of what we're trying to make here and be more true to ourselves rather than relying on the AI. So I think these shocks and these incidents may happen, whether on a student level, whether on a company level, whether on a global level, I'm not sure. But I think as humans, we're always able to rectify problems, whether they're before it happens or after it happens, to understand how we need to direct the direction of the project or the design to become more human focused rather than relying on AI. Yeah, not trying to doom scare there, but
yes, I'm just sitting here scared out of my bones. I'm
just trying to say, use your own personal convictions about AI, not convictions about design, and be true to yourself, basically.
I get you. How might AI affect the future of design portfolios? Very interesting. We hear that from students all the time.
Yeah. So how might AI affect the future of design portfolios? So basically, I hate to say it, but what we used to judge about, as design portfolios before, we used to break it down to kind of like you had your idea, you had your setup, you had your sketch, and then you had your rendering ability, and then you had maybe some model ability. So these are the kind of things we used to judge about people's kind of handmade portfolios. But actually now, kind of everybody's ability to render has almost jumped up to the same level. As I mentioned before, this playing field has been almost leveled. Of course, genuine creativity still shows through, because if everyone's rendering the same way, it becomes very nonchalant. You don't judge the person anymore because you feel like it's all the same. So there's still a room there for people to genuinely create new ways of rendering using AI. That's still something that can be thought about. But yeah, all people's work will probably be equalized, which is kind of a shame to say, but it's still something that's going to happen, and I've seen it happen. So in a sense that if we do see similar things, if we're getting portfolios come through to the company and there's a similar rendering level, we won't judge the rendering anymore. It won't be special anymore because everyone's the same. It'll be appreciated that people can do it, but at the same time, that's when more unique styles maybe will stand out even more. So if you really have a unique style or a unique way of doing things, you'll be like a red flag out of the vast sea of the sameness. You will really stick in people's minds. So I would really, implore people to say that if you are using AI, okay, use it for what you need to use it for. But at the same time, don't forget that everyone else has a similar tool and they're probably doing the same thing. So this is important to know that if your portfolio stands out because it's not all AI, this is also an important thing. You still need to show you can use it, but don't rely on it solely to do everything. Yeah. So uniqueness and standing out is probably more important than ever, and you will shine compared to other people, basically. So I think this is something I really suggest people to try still. Even if you use AI to do something more interesting, that's still a way of you being creative. You're not using the default AI. You're trying something else and pushing further. So yeah. So yeah, so each person may be using AI in their portfolios and they think they have something unique because people don't really share portfolios. They still like to keep it to themselves. But when you send it to a company, if it remotely looks like someone else who also uses AI, we will very quickly get bored of this. It's like watching the same TV program again and again and again. You're not going to want to see it anymore. So yeah, it's better to be more unique and find your own style. And again, there's also the other end of the spectrum where if you really lean into AI and you really want to show you have skills in it, that is also appreciated. If you genuinely can be creative with it, that's also another type of design focus. If you can manipulate AI in such a way that people go, wow, that's cool. That's also another way to approach it. So you just have to be very clear with your targets, what you're trying to show. Am I trying to show my human skill, a little bit enhanced by AI, or am I trying to show my full AI skill? You shouldn't try to make this very blurry and not know who did what. You need to be very clear. I did this with AI. I fully created this with AI, or this was partial AI, mostly human. Because this question is going to come up a lot in future interviews, I think. We even do it now. We ask, is this all yours? Is this not yours? Because, it's, as I said, for me, if I look at someone's portfolio and I see just a very nice image, but it's a very normal AI SUV or normal AI sedan, it just instantly makes me think, okay, you just made a generic thing and, maybe manipulated it a little bit, but there's no passion inside. I think it's something that's very important. We still need to see the passion in your portfolio. Yeah.
Great insight there. As I say,
Yeah.
we have a lot of students who ask that question in particular. And I think one of the things that we try and do is try and get students to acknowledge when they use AI and what they're
Yeah, for
using
sure.
it for.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the key
Makes sense.
to yes, the key to them understanding how they feel comfortable using it. They'll know what percentage they need to use, what they don't need to use, and that's the way they find the balance in their workflow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure how relevant this question is given that you've talked so much about it already, but is AI used a lot in design studios? It sounds like it is.
Yeah. So is AI used a lot in design studios? So I'm just going to keep it frankly, yes, it is. In the studio I'm based in, actually AI is used extensively. It's whether it's proposal generation, proposal rendering, final rendering, scenario images generation, this kind of thing is used a hell of a lot because actually, in the real design studio, you're of course you're trying to convince other designers what is right, but you're also trying to convince the company. The people you're trying to convince are not designers. They are, how to say, they are from other departments. They are from engineering. They're from marketing. They're from sales. These kind of people. So you're trying to sell them a story, basically. So we have only started to use this because AI gives you the amazing ability for something that we used to really struggle with was showing cars in scenario images. Before when you used to have to make the car driving on the road, someone opening the trunk, someone, a dog jumping in the car, someone using the car at a campsite, someone using it at a football game, whatever, this kind of thing. It used to just be a nightmare for every designer to think how to show this. But now it's as simple as put this car on a beach, put this car in the park, put this car in the forest. Those kind of things really help to convince those higher leaders what the car is going to be used for. So in that sense, yes, it's used a lot. And then in terms of the design process, so I said even as little as four years ago, everything was done manually with sketches and then Photoshop. Um, and it was really kind of a, pen to paper, paper to scan, scan to Photoshop, this kind of thing. And we tried to do higher realistic renderings, but it always looked a bit fake. It never looked as real as it should be. But now AI has basically made it so that things become very realistic, very fast. Whereas before we used to try put this off. We didn't want to see the realistic thing so fast. We wanted to keep it very loose, very fast, but it wasn't so accessible to different departments. Whereas now, if you can show it in a more realistic manner, they understand what is being made straight away. So we're generating fully AI design processes from sketch to realistic within mere minutes. We also do human proposals, but that human stuff is more kept internal. We showcase the theme, we showcase the idea, but then in the end, we will always say, okay, show those sketches, but then please show an AI version of that rendered in realistic paint, realistic feeling, this kind of stuff, so those leaders can understand it. I don't want to say we don't do Photoshop renderings anymore. We still do. That's not the case. But in times of when we are very pinched for time and we really need to get something out the door, we do look to AI very heavily to get things out the door quickly because it just makes sense. Because to be honest, once you show that level of realism to somebody, and if you try to do it yourself by Photoshop, the difference is so obvious that this was done by a human, this was done by AI. It's kind of hard to turn back. It's like going from, CRT monitor to HD to, this kind of this kind of evolution in technology. It's very hard for people to go back to the old technology first and see and not see through the lens of the newer technology. So, yeah. So it is vital that you can use AI skills. We still sketch to show things internally, but as I said, to higher ups, to leaders, to CEOs, these kind of people, we really use AI to sell our ideas because it's not only made the process a lot easier to go through and to more convincing, it's just made our time a lot less arduous and over the top with the laborious rendering and this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's probably the answer. That it is used a lot, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, this is obviously coming from at the beginning. You sort of said, you work for, is it Dongfeng, who are obviously one of the big four in China.
Yeah.
It's not a little design studio.
It's
this is a major OE, and that it's used quite extensively. And also, China obviously is extremely well known for China speed, in terms of. Yeah,
I know.
It's used for. Yeah.
China's speed is a very real thing, I can tell you.
Yeah. It's the madness of what used to be 3 years is now 9 months type thing.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
yes.
it's crazy. Absolutely.
I've experienced it many times. Yeah.
Yeah.
And AI has only made it more like, hey, those 9 months seem pretty long. Were you sure on that?
There's so much here.
Yeah, you had so much time before. What were you doing?
If clients prefer AI results, what happens to traditional designers?
Yeah, so if clients prefer AI results, what happens to traditional designers? So unfortunately, as I just said on the previous question, this is kind of already starting to happen. Clients, they don't necessarily care where the idea comes from or what was the process. They just want to see the end result. So traditional design doesn't necessarily go away, but when something works and when something is convincing to another person, you can't ignore the fact that works. You have to keep moving in that direction. So design becomes more of an internal thing. You're not really showing your inner workings to outside people. You're keeping those internal and you're only showing those finished results. You don't necessarily show your true working as we used to. Before we used to show initial sketches, renderings, final renderings, and that was our process. But these days we kind of almost do away with that initial part and just go straight to the final thing because we already said, okay, that's for us. They don't need to see this. And we will showcase the final result at the end. That's all they need to see. Because before that process was so slow, we didn't have the final part in the beginning. We had to show the beginning, the middle, the end, but now we can do the middle, beginning and middle for ourselves, and just show the end straight away. Um, so yeah, so basically, there's a lot of work that goes into it. I don't diminish the work of a designer, of course. There's still a lot of thinking, internal kind of struggle of designers to understand what is good, what is bad, what do you want to do. But as I said, it's just like, the fact that, maybe designers in the 80s and the early 90s, when they were so set on their, the markers, the pastels, there's, doing full size drawings, this kind of stuff. It was the medium at the time that was needed to convince. Those are the things that were needed to be done. Everything is of its time to basically, and as I said, and it's the same when I started. We had, Photoshop was before me, of course. It was still being used, but it was becoming very mainstream by the time I started. But, I did start off with pens, pencils, markers and stuff. But it quickly became apparent that those things weren't really needed anymore. And you had to jump onto Photoshop. If you didn't, you almost were gone. You would die without it. So it's just a necessity to move with the times, basically. But you can still keep your core skills internal and maybe for yourself. So I think AI is the next big shake-up compared to what Photoshop and maybe Alias did to the industry. Back in like the early 2000s, that was probably the last huge shake-up. So AI is doing the same thing. It's really shaking up the whole industry, and for me, I think it's a good thing. But it's this. As I said, there's still a lot of people on the edge, but that's what today's about, to convince people that it's something that needs to move with the times, and it'll all be good in the end, basically. So car design medium is shaking up, and it's about moving with the times. And I said, clients prefer to see what they can understand. They want to see the product. They want to see it in an environment, because that's where they see cars. They don't understand a clay model in clay. They don't understand a car covered in Dynoc. They're like, well, where's the glass? Where's the lamps? Where's this? Where's that? They don't understand this. They want to see something realistic. So when they can see that, they feel happier. Obviously, we're not just doing this for clients. We still have to be internally happy. But if you're internally happy and you can show the final product, it makes sure everyone's happy, basically. As I said, it's hard to
world, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly. So I think it's not just our industry that's doing this. It's hard to ignore what AI can offer. In the end, the products we make they are for ourselves because we put so much passion into them, but in the end, they are products to be sold to the client in the company or the project team, but also to the wider world of the people buying these vehicles with their hard-earned money, basically. So if you can show it in an efficient way to the client, to the people, they really will appreciate it, because it makes them feel happy to know what they're seeing, basically. Because before was very ambiguous. Like, this is a very crazy sketch with 40-inch wheels and really extreme proportion. They were like, well, I don't know what I'm really looking at, but it looks cool, so I'm going to trust you. It was kind of like that.
And you said it's cool, so it must be cool.
It's cool, so. And sometimes in the end it was a bit of a letdown, because you're like, well, actually, after package constraints, and it became very watered down. Whereas now it's kind of like, we still cheat the AI images, of course. We still want to make them look sexy and this kind of thing, but it's a more realist sexy, not a far-flung sexy, this kind of thing. So yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. So, do you feel AI is stealing our God-given right to create?
So, is AI... So, do I feel like AI is stealing our God-given right to create? I really wholeheartedly believe that AI is not stealing our right to create. I really feel like it's kind of liberating our inability to create things that we're not able to create before. So sometimes I feel like there are those designers who are very multifaceted, who can design this type of car, that type of car, something soft, something sharp, something crazy. But actually, in my many years in the industry, those kind of people are a little bit few and far between. They are not your everyday designer. You often, as humans are, we have our likes and our dislikes, and we heavily lean towards our likes. Through subliminal thinking, we tend to kind of, I don't say we draw the same things, but we have a similar value in what we create. And the the way a design studio works is you have lots of people, different people with lots of different talents within design or styles, and then maybe one style project requires that person, or one project requires that person. So therefore, that's how it works. But actually, AI right now kind of unshackles you from your self. How can I say? It's your self influence. You know, the way that you like to do things, you can almost stop thinking about what you like to do and start working above that kind of thing. So you can say, well, I want to design I don't like designing cute cars because I'm not good at it, but I want to design a cute car using AI. So you don't have to feel burdened by your own creativity. You could just use AI to create for you, and then use your design sense to know what is good and bad. It's happened to me many times. You know, I have a very specific style of cars that I like, and actually my brain won't allow me to do anything different, really. You know, it's kind of it's worked for me well in my career, but actually at one point it's going to run out and, you know, go, hey, you need to do something different. And AI has actually helped me a lot in the last few years to create those different things, you know, but just use my ability to and experience to judge what is good and bad. So yeah, so AI allows you to move forward from your personal tendencies and allows you to explore further. So that's the great thing about it. You don't have to really think about what do I like, what does, you know, what am I good at? You know, you can just let AI do it for you. Um, so yeah, I was limited, but with AI, I pushed further than I could ever dream of. You know, I create things that I necessarily wouldn't be really interested in drawing by myself, but I can value what I see. That's the amazing thing about AI. You know, I can make the cutest car. I even made like Hello Kitty cars for my daughter. Yeah, I would never draw them by myself because I can't really. I wouldn't have the, you know, I'm too serious about car design. But when I make a Hello Kitty car for my daughter, I see the value in that because you're moving outside your comfort zone. Yeah, so basically you can do anything. Cute, weird, sharp, serious, sporty, non-sporty, this kind of thing. So that's the great thing about AI, I really think. So I really feel like it's enhancing creativity. You know, it's really allowing you to move out of your own personal comfort zone and move into areas you never thought you'd want to go to before. So don't be afraid to just jump on, create anything you want that you never thought you'd design before, and just see what happens. That's the best approach to AI I can say. Just see what happens. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. We'll have to put a couple of screenshots on here, but you know, looking at your Instagram,
Mm.
your Instagram page, Prompt
Yeah.
AI, we do
Yeah.
see a wide, varied spread
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
different
Yeah. Yeah.
types of things, and we can see that, you know, there's a lot of things you can create, and you can
Yeah.
broaden
Yeah.
your thoughts about that, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what
Um,
really allowed me to, you know, be more at home with design. Whereas before I was kind of stuck in a rut. You know, AI allowed me to be more at home with, you know, just exploring and just throwing it out there. It doesn't matter if it's good, bad, whatever. You know, as long as I feel like it's something interesting, that's all that matters.
do we feel AI is here for the long run?
So yes, so do I feel AI is here for the long run? So yes, I believe that it is here for the long run. It's you know, in the last so many years, it's become very ingrained in the kind of the design process. It kind of will be hard to get away from. I mean, as I said, if there's one of these shock moments in the industry where something happens and there's like some big, it could be like a plagiarism thing, or you know, something happens, or then there could be a course correction and something can happen, you know. So, and I think there is some risk of cars becoming too similar, and that is a very real risk. I believe it could happen. So therefore, it's up to individual companies to really judge, you know, be more judgmental of what they're creating, basically. Um, as I said, I think it's you know, it's more made less labor intensive stuff, you know, which stuff that used to take hours uh, if not days, it's been reduced to literally mere seconds. It's kind of wild how we used to spend so long doing things. This ability to save time, I think, it cannot be ignored. No one would, in their right mind, go back to doing stuff that took so long. You know, I think more for leisure. You know, if you're really interested in creating something and you really want to work through it, that's fine. You know, I think that will still become more of a leisure thing, and you know, more in your free time, you'll be able to do this kind of thing. But in terms of a business, a company, saving time, of course, is the paramount thing in terms of saving time and this kind of thing. So in that way, it's hard. You know, just as there was the horse, there was the car, the train was faster than the plane was faster. And then, there's these kind of things are very natural to humans to adopt, and we are scared by them in the beginning, you know. People didn't want to get on trains in the first place, didn't want to get on planes in the first. It's the same thing, people are very aware of AI because they think, oh, it's taking away my job, it's taking away this. It's just your mindset. How do you use it in a way that reflects your values or how you want to move forward with it? But it's kind of hard to diminish it in the fact that it's had a lot of impact already, not only on design, also on a lot of industries. So I think it will settle down eventually, and it will be less heavily. I wouldn't say it'll be less heavily used, but it will be more. How can I say? It will be standardized in a way of how you do things. You'll say this is a standard way to do it. We do this. We don't do any more. We'll just use it for this, and then we'll have other things we will do, and then that balance will be found basically. So I think that's how AI will be used in the long run. Yeah, basically. So yeah, it's just about saving time essentially.
How can AI be used with CMF?
So how can AI be used for CMF? So actually, this was something very interesting that actually, exterior design shot forward with AI. It was like exterior design was the only focus there was. It was very interesting because it was like you had other departments going, we see you using AI for exterior design, but we don't really have anything for CMF, or even interior design was really lagging behind heavily. I think interior design has moved forward quite a lot, and there's a lot more stuff out there about how to use it for interior design, but also CMF was really far behind because their process was quite heavily Photoshop intensive or VRED intensive about materials and this kind of stuff. So, but I think actually now it's being used a lot for mood board generation. And also, if you have a base image of the interior or exterior you have, now it's super easy just to give the AI the picture of the car, give it the color sample you want. You just give it a color chart sample or a sample of the color you want, and you just say apply this color to this car, and it will do it instantaneously. Whereas before you had a lot of using paths on Photoshop, adjusting the values, adjusting the color saturation, and it took a long time. Whereas now you can just give AI directly a color sample, and it will immediately just change the color of that car or change the something from matte black to gloss black, this kind of thing. So it's really, again, it's alleviated a lot of time and effort just by allowing it to change things very fast. Same goes with interior. Maybe you'll say like, okay, interior may be a little bit more difficult because it's hard to select different areas of the interior. The AI cannot really understand yet what you're trying to say, but you could almost say, okay, make a black version of this interior or make a gray version of this interior, and then kind of, you'd kind of Photoshop them together. So I think that's not as advanced yet in terms of CMF, but the ability is still there to create different ideas. It's just maybe there's a lot more human intervention after the fact that you've created the images. So I believe it's a coming thing that there will be more specialty AIs to do this work, because now the AIs we use are more generic based. They're not specifically car design based. But in the future, there really will be more specific car design based or design based AIs, I believe, that will come forward, or more specific to the task of CMF or HMI or this kind of thing. So it's only right to these AIs become more focused on the area that they're needed, basically. Yeah.
At a recent Geely talk, they said AI was becoming part of the process. How is it becoming more effective in the industry? I think you've kind of answered quite a lot of that already, to be honest. And how do you see the importance of AI in the coming years?
So yeah, again, as Sean already said, I've how is it being used? At Geely, they said it's becoming part of the process. How is it becoming effective? And how do I see the importance? I've kind of answered these kind of questions already, but I'll kind of briefly run over it again. Yes, I agree. It's being used every single day, and it's used on production projects. It's used on concept projects, and I do believe if you're not using it at all, it's counterproductive. But again, there's a balance between human creativity and AI usage. So companies need to find that balance. To basically, yeah, I used to actually work at Geely Design for a long time. I was there for 8 years. The same people that you would have seen at the talk, I also worked in that same studio. And then I said, when I was there, it was all done by hand. Everything done by hand. The first cars I did at Geely, the first cars that became production cars were done by pencil, uh, done by doing very basic Photoshop sketches, this kind of stuff. So now it's like a totally different world. It's the guy I was back then, the guy I am now. It's a totally different in terms of thing, but of course I have the experience to help me. So things have changed a lot. So when I think back to that process, it was good, but it was slow, very slow. So it required insane effort to get what I could basically do in a day. Now took me maybe 2 weeks back then. It's kind of an amazing change of pace. So as I said, it's becoming effective. It's a game changer. I don't want to scaremonger to say if you don't learn it, you'll be left behind. But I think in just like in every technological age, if you're not at least on par with what's the basics of it, you will get left behind. Just like learning how to use a computer, learning how to use the typing, whatever. It's a mobile phone. If you don't have a mobile phone these days, can you stay ahead? I don't think so. It's just keeping up with the times, basically. So I think AI in the coming years shouldn't be diminished. It's as a ever-present part of our design process, but also the world in general. Yeah, I don't say you'll be behind the curve. I'm not trying to imply that, but I just think there needs to be a basic understanding there, to be able to jump on board with it anytime that's needed, basically, because it is something we will use, basically. Yeah.
Can you give some advice on how to add AI to the creative process?
So, advice to add AI to the creative process. So, for me, my advice for this would be that to add to the creative process would be to find areas of design that maybe you might need some support as a designer. I think not every designer, is good at everything. The amount of people I've met who are good at this stage, but not so good at this stage, or they were great at this stage, but not at this stage. It's a multi-faceted thing, design. There's a lot of people who are very good at something at the end or something good, very good at the beginning, but you will seldom meet someone who can do it all. It's a very difficult thing. So I actually think that AI alleviates some self-pressure on a designer if they have some doubts about their skills, that they can then fill that gap, to help them lift them up. They should still be aware of their deficiencies. It's not to say AI is solving all your problems, but it should definitely help you to alleviate some problems you may have, and support you. So I think using that to help you support in those areas, it can allow you to focus on other areas, but also at the same time, you should be able to focus on your weaknesses, and give more time to those, and let AI help you out a little bit. Again, also it can be used as like a creative assistant. The amount of times where I've been making one thing, whether it's with the AI or by myself, and then on the side I have like another AI proposal on the go. It's kind of like you can do two things at once. I'm doing this one here is my main process, my main proposal, and then this one is kind of like my AI proposal. And I'll just keep running that one through and see if something better comes out. I think before you couldn't really do that because you're so focused on one proposal by yourself, you didn't have time to do another one. Whereas AI can kind of be your second hand or your second brain working for you when you're focused on another thing. So don't be afraid to just every 10 minutes just type something over here or push something over here and then get back to your main work and then just see what happens. So that's the best thing. You never know what might come out. It might even support your first proposal. So it's like having a second designer working for you. So I really implore people to do that, because I do that a lot. I think it's very helpful. It's like a second pair of hands working for you. Yeah. So, but again, it's always up to the individual to see the amount of AI they want to use. I wouldn't force anyone to go 100% AI or 10% AI. It's just allowing your ship to sail smoothly, basically. It makes you feel that you can be more comfortable in what you're doing, basically. So that's where I really challenge people to know what's their limits, and if they can do it by themselves, do it by yourself. If not, use AI to assist you.
Yeah, it's creative. It's a personal process, isn't it? So,
basically, yeah, it's a personal process.
Yeah. What are the best softwares to use?
Okay, so what
Students
are
are
the best?
obsessed with softwares. They want to know which
Yes.
ones they should use.
So what are the best softwares to use within AI? So that's there's so many, like it feels like every week there's something new that comes out.
Oh,
But
yeah.
actually for me, what I use is I use like I don't use these exclusively. No, I don't say that. I'm not here to explain my full process, but I use Optic, Midjourney. We have a thing in China called LibLib. You obviously have Google Gemini, Nana Banana, Seed Dream, and then you have Kling for video, Midjourney video. What else do I use? Yeah, I just use like a combination of all these things. It's not to say one is doing everything. I'll maybe make a Mid-Journey image or make an optic image and then put it into Gemini or LibLib image. It's kind of like you really see what to put these things together. And sometimes it could be a make it in here, put it in here, put it in here, put it in here, and then here's the end result. I don't know how I got there, but I will just use these things in a way that's kind of like you just throw it in because it doesn't require any effort. That's the thing I want people to know. It's really like cooking in a kitchen. You won't make a new recipe unless you try. You gotta try stuff. You gotta put this spice, that spice, whatever, and then see what you make.
Yeah.
That's really about AI. You don't be stuck with, okay, this one is only for doing this one is only for doing this, and I must use them exclusively like this. No, you want to say, okay, I'm going to create this one here, put it in here, take that one, put it in here. It's really about this process of just exploration, basically. So I think those are the best softwares to use for me. I know there's a lot of us that I've never really used Viscom. I'm kind of like optic all the way. For me that was like because I've known the optic guy for a long time. He helped me use the first version of it, doing some like beta testing, this kind of thing. So I've kind of stuck with that. But I do know that Viscom actually is very good. From what I've seen with Viscom, the platform itself is very nice, with the 3D models, this kind of stuff. So I think that's also another very valuable tool to use. So I'd probably add Midjourney to there. Not Midjourney, Viscom to there. I haven't used it personally, but I would say, yeah, definitely upon that list, add Viscom into the mix as well.
Yeah, I think we're recommending it to students at the moment because they do the fantastic thing of offering students free pro
Oh
usage,
yeah, that's
which
good.
is,
Yeah,
they obviously want to become the go-to
yeah, for sure.
software for many people.
Yeah, no, I think
So
it's
I think
good.
they're very wise to just say, look,
Yeah,
kids, just use it for free.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Obviously, when you move into big industry, don't forget us, but you're gonna
No,
have to
yeah,
pay
for
for it.
sure.
So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
No,
nice, isn't
I
it?
can
Yeah.
see they've got like an all-in-one thing from like sketch creativity. I think they have a more focus on the sketch creativity side, and it will help
Hmm.
you and the rendering. And then I've seen the whole process from basically nothing to final rendering is all self-contained. So I think in that sense, it's a good software. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good little intro for many of them as well.
Yeah.
Where do you recommend not to use AI?
Where do I not? So basically, where do I recommend not using AI? So actually, for me, I kind of recommend using it everywhere if you can. And that kind of goes against the question. I don't want to
No,
go
no,
against the question. Yeah,
this is
yeah.
your sesh. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
fine.
I see it as don't see it as doing human work or AI work. I think a lot of people split these two. They say, oh, this is my human work, this is my AI work. They like to put these in these two boxes. As I said, it can work while you work as well. Find the balance you like. Everyone's different. I said, I'm older, unfortunately. So I have a lot more experience in car design. So my foundations are strong. So I don't necessarily sketch so much anymore, but I use AI as my creative outlet. So that's just me, because I'm in a different period of my career. But then, others just still use it to create their core skills. I think it's up to each individual to see what they need to do and what they don't need to do. But I don't necessarily say it shouldn't be used somewhere. It just depends on what you need it for, basically. Um, yeah, I think, as I said, this is very important actually. So actually, my foundations are strong, just like yours will be strong after so many years of doing what you do. But building those core skills was the important thing that allowed you to understand what you're doing. You know, AI can be learned. Skills have to be crafted. I think this is the most important thing. You can't learn AI first and then understand what you're doing it for.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. You need to understand the thing you're crafting first and then learn how AI can assist you, not the other way around. So yeah, I don't want to say people shouldn't use AI somewhere, because that's not for me to say, but I think people by themselves need to understand where they want to use it and where they shouldn't use it. It's different for everyone. Yeah.
So, is AI something that employers actively want to see in portfolios?
Yeah. So is AI something that employers actively want to see in portfolios? Again, this is speaking from my behalf. I don't want to speak for everyone. And of course, different companies have different logic, different, mantras about their design ethos. So I can't speak generally for everyone. But as you said, if for me, I would want to see it. This is from my personal opinion. Because I still think there's some diehard designers who think it's not really honest to use it, which, I mean, in a way, it can be true if you're really such a creative and you feel like it's really your human-driven passion that needs to be shine out. As long as you can show it, I think that's the most important thing. If you can proudly say, I didn't use AI, but I created this amazing thing, that in itself is also an amazing thing. I think it's just like the old days. It's an amazing thing to shine out. But I think in the coming months, not years, it's becoming a more and more acceptable as a skill. If you can really be creative with it and show new things, just like a human, if you can be creative with your skill and show new things, it's kind of a bit, it's slightly different, because human creativity is an inbuilt skill. AI is more about exploration and adaptation, about the program you're using, how to exploit it further. But if you know how to do that, that's also an interesting thing. So I think if you can use it creatively, if you can use it in a new way, yes, employers want to see it. They want to know how you're exploiting this software, because you exploiting that software is your unique understanding of that software that maybe other people don't know how to do it. Someone might look at some work maybe I have created or other people created and just think, how is this person doing this? That is the essence of what could be considered good AI skill. It's the knowledge of the person. It's not the AI itself. So I think that's really something that people want to see.
Are AI programmers going to become more in demand?
So are AI programmers going to become
the student put the word programmers like they think they're another animal, but I don't know. You give me your take on it.
I'm not sure. See them crouched on the computer.
Yeah.
So AI programmers going to become more and more in demand. So actually, I think, maybe in some respective field, yes, or maybe in some core background work of the AI, yes, I believe they'll become more in demand. But in terms of our direct field of car design or design in general, I believe not, because those people can only build a software. They don't understand what it's going to be used for. So it still takes that designer or that person to use that software to make the outcome. So I think a designer can learn programming to create a car design program. It's kind of a, self-driven car design programming that could become a thing. And not maybe a specific programmer themselves who would come to be a car designer. I think that wouldn't be something. So yeah, a car designer learning programming, it can happen. I think, many softwares have probably started because someone was more interested in design but wanted to push AI forward. So that does happen, but whether it happens directly in a studio, I'm not sure. Maybe in the future, if a company has more of a demand for an internal AI, which can happen, because the more you use generic outside AIs, the less specific you are. So if you want to be really specific, maybe you have to create an internal AI. That would require a programmer, but would still have to be guided by designers. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's not something really to worry about, but it doesn't hurt for a designer to be interested in that field in terms of programming and understanding AI as well. So I wouldn't be against it. for someone to learn that.
Yeah, I think this is maybe a sign of the times that, it was only a year ago when we looked at people doing NI and prompting was, oh, you do this prompt and it does this, and people go, oh, well, sorry, it's programming, it's coding, Whereas now,
basically.
now you look at it and you think, well, yeah, he's just bunged a sketch in and asked it to be blue, it's, it's much simpler now, isn't it?
No, it is getting more simple. It's becoming more user friendly for sure. And as I said, it's gone from totally one-sided, asking the AI for everything, to now kind of using more of your human stuff to create. It's definitely heading more into the human direction.
So, a bit of a strangely worded question here from a student who just say, people who are ethically against it. I don't know what that means personally, Jamie. I presume he's asking you what you think of them. So
people are ethically against what? I'm not sure, but I'm going to hazard a guess that it's to do with AI in the sense of big data, this kind of thing. So yeah, there are people who are against it. Whether it's from a worldwide ethics standpoint in terms energy usage, water usage, this kind of stuff, and it is kind of it's a lot to think about, the amount of energy usage there is, for me making one picture of a car, what does that cost, in terms of, electricity, money, whatever. And then there's also a lot of people who come down from that bigger level to a personal level where they feel like they've spent their whole career creating by themselves, or they went to university, they spent all this money on education and this kind of, so they are really kind of fervently against it because they feel like why did I spend so much time doing this when now it can be done so fast? It's kind of a bit like a cheat code. It feels to some people it's a bit like a cheat code. So it's as I said, for the people up on thinking on this big level, yes, it's hard to convince them against this, but that's on a big worldwide level. I'm just a small fry doing my daily work, but I'm sure there's a lot more ways to make things more efficient and more environmentally friendly. As I said, there are on the work level, there are good and bad things to why people can be against it ethically. Of course, there's people who are worried about plagiarism. They don't want their hard work to be just quickly taken by someone else and used in like a LoRa or used in like a big algorithm where something might be siphoned or used or so. So it's a very real concern to generally creative people. If something's just quickly taken and used and mixed into someone else's work. Yeah, and then, but of course, I've seen people, even in my office, I've seen people who've come be really against it and almost been like, no, I'm going to keep drawing by hand, I'm going to do my thing, to now being like, oh no, this is good. This has really helped me to, move forward and become better in my career and this kind of thing. So it's just about how you view it, whether on your level, how you view it, on a higher level, how you view it. And I think we have to be careful with it. I think there's a lot of gray areas in terms of design. It's not so plain sailing. There's a lot of gray areas. So I think as long as people are wary of what they're doing and how they're doing it, and you're true to yourself or true to your design values and how you do it, I think we should all be good. It's just there's probably a lot of people out there who want to use it in a negative way, or in a way that they can plagiarize someone's work, or because it's very easy just to take someone's sketch, put it into another software, render it again, ask it for a new face, and then you have a whole different idea. But was it truthful to yourself to get to that point? So it's about self-ethics as well. I think people need to really be wary of that. Yeah.
I think it's come up in the university that, as part of our, if we do train people in AI, that we've got to brief them on the ethics and, helping them to understand that, in terms of their self-development as designers, it's not helping them just copying stuff.
It doesn't help.
It doesn't help them. So they want to develop their own minds, their own thinking, their own schema in terms of how they develop ideas, and just copying something doesn't make you valuable, and it won't help you. So we do have a bit of an ethical thing with the students before we enter that world, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, it might give someone a quick, rush of dopamine when they're like, oh, that's cool, like that thing. But
yeah.
if you really ask them, like, how did you make that? No one's going to say, well, I stole this sketch and put it in here, and because it's not ethical. I think in any way it's not ethical. Even before, we were like looking at other people's sketches. You never copied them, but you were inspired by them. This kind of thing. You never went and directly copied something.
Oh, we've all been inspired by a sketch, haven't we? So,
yeah, for sure.
All right, let's look onto something. Oh, I was going to say more light-hearted, but no. What part of car design is the safest from AI?
So what part of car design is the safest from AI? So at the moment, the area that's not really been touched is kind of clay modeling. I think clay modeling has not been really touched because it's so physical. I think it's something that can't really be replaced. I think a good clay model is really like that's the truth of car design. There's no lying on a clay model. It's all the truth. It's all the thing there is the thing you see. You can't use AI to fluff your way out of it. It's there. So I think that's very safe. So anyone wants to be a clay modeler, maybe it's also good for people to try clay modeling because it's a really honest thing. Digital modeling as well is something still very true. It's quite safe from AI. I believe, as I said, we don't really use AI for digital models yet. We use AI to we take like a side view sketch, use AI to make a model. And then at the moment, we're even kind of using AI modifiers within some programs to maybe set some hard points on this mesh data. And then you can say, okay, make this wheelbase this long, make the car this height, make the overhangs this. So that's really helping in a quick sense. The model quality is very low. It's not a high quality model, but in terms of proportion adjustment on a mesh model, it's super fast to do that kind of thing. So it's slowly creeping in. But I believe it will never replace, the true understanding of how to make a digital model or a clay model. Never, because those are really human, tactile thinking, needed environments, basically. So I think AI will never really replace clay or digital modeling, basically. So I think those areas are safe. And then, of course, genuine creativity, it's still safe, I think. So, if you're genuinely creative, I still think that's such a valuable thing. So, yeah, those are safe.
Yeah, it's quite funny. I've bumped into client modelers and we've talked about AI and they've says, well, the stuff we like doing, the stuff we don't like doing, we can get AI to do it all, like filling out paperwork and all that nonsense.
Exactly.
We get AI to do all that stuff so we can go away and do the enjoyable stuff, And I kind of think the client modelers have been through it already with CAS. The digital sculpting thing, that was a bit of a threat for them, wasn't it? But
yeah, for sure.
They worked their way through it and they're still here. So
I mean, for me, digital modeling is good, but 90% of the time you see what you've made in digital, the first time you see it, you go, "Oh, like this is not great." We've got to work this by hand.
I think everyone's been there where you do something and then you stand next to it and then you realise the surface you cherished in side view can't be seen. And the car looks like it's too high and stuff like that.
Exactly. That's why the truth is your eye. The truth is the human understanding.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. Is AI going to take over? Is AI going to take over, Jamie?
No,
Tell us the truth.
Sorry, it is, yes. The AI overlords have told me yes. No, it will not take over. As I said, throughout this whole kind of podcast, I've said it's definitely aiding the process, providing immediate support, to designers' ability to produce high quality work at a fast rate. As I said, I don't say there's no way to do work with AI because we still can do what we used to do. There's no doubt about it. It's still something that's applicable. We can still do it. It's very powerful now to ignore. I believe, I don't say we couldn't move beyond it, but just the way that we've adopted technologies in the past, we get used to these things and we will keep endeavoring to integrate them more into our daily work. So it's just going to become a part of the arsenal of a future designer's skill set. Just like you can say, well, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, I'm good at this. AI will be one of those. Maybe there might be more people who heavily focus in it, but everyone still has the ability to have it in their list of skills, basically. So I don't want to say, I don't want to come across as this is everyone's opinion. It's not, maybe it's my opinion, but maybe if you feel a little bit like you don't get to grips with it or don't want to try, maybe some people might see that as a bit of hesitation, for adopting new technology. So I think it's something that people just need to try it, see it, do it, and don't think it's going to take over, because it's not going to take over. We are still humans in the end. We still have the right to judge everything, the right to do everything. We're not creating cars for AI, we're creating cars for humans. So in the end, we have to have this human thinking, this kind of thing. So no, it's not going to take over, but it's definitely becoming part of the process going forward.
With rapid development, is AI playing a strong role?
So with rapid development, is AI playing a strong role? So as maybe people know, especially in the Chinese car industry, what used to be, in maybe European companies was maybe 4 to 5 years to develop a car. When I started my career in China like 15 years ago, it was about 3 years to develop a car. So in Europe was 4 to 5, China was 3. And then it went from 3 to 2, and then 2 to like 18 months. And I think in total now it's hovering around about 18 months, 9 months for design, maybe 9 months for engineering and manufacturing. So what used to take maybe, let's say 25 years ago, could be up to 5 years, has now gone down to like 18 months. So of course, with that rapid development and that rapid pressure, and I think European car companies are also having to catch up to this speed as well. It's they want to also enter the market at a faster rate. So it's not just a China thing; it's probably a global thing right now. So you have to have the tools to allow you to keep up with that. So I think that's the ability of AI is a strong role to allow you to make things faster, not only make decisions faster, create faster. These lead to products coming out faster. It's only logical that the faster you do it, the faster it comes out. But again, it's not like before. If you did something fast before, you often had many mistakes. Now, if you use AI, actually, you're creating something quite perfect just in a shorter amount of time. So you don't really have to worry about mistakes. Design development is shortened dramatically. As I said, I almost forgot how much time we used to have. Like it almost feels like, what did I used to do with all my time? Now it's quite fast. So AI does move things faster, almost kind of a scary rate. So so basically, with this kind of the last question, I just want to kind of wrap it up and say, kind of in conclusion, I think of after using AI for, I think it's around about 4 years this month. I think I've been using AI for
Really? Wow.
around about 4 years. Just about 4 years. I think it was like 2022 I started to use AI. It is here to stay. I think it's something that I don't want to say it will It will be like a slow revolution, revolutionize the design process. It already has, I think. But as I said, I really want to reiterate to anyone listening that it's not the only thing. It's not to the be all and end all of the design process. You still have to stand up for your own design, what you believe in, what you really cherish, what you really like, and I think, I also didn't learn everything so well, and I was never that good at rendering. I was good at sketching and this kind of thing. AI came at the right time for me because it allowed me to be more creative and then fill my gaps where I had problems, really. And I'm too old now to go back to fill those gaps myself, because I'm too, sometimes maybe a bit too lazy. But it's, I think it still allows people to focus more on themselves and use AI to help them out where they need. So basically, I think core design skills are still important. Understanding volume, proportion, this kind of stuff is still so important. Don't ignore these things. AI cannot teach you these things. Your own sense and looking at cars, looking at things on the internet, experiencing cars or experiencing transport solutions is very important for your understanding of how these things are used. Looking at pictures all the time is not helpful. going out and experiencing them is very helpful. So core design skills still essential. I think AI will only help you improve, but as I've said a few times already, the genuine human creativity can never be matched. Can never be matched. I think this is always something that even when I was at Coventry University all those moons ago, that this talk about human creativity is always important. As it was back then, it still is now. So if you have a good idea, use AI to push it further and take the best of the human, best of the machine and put it together, then you can get the best output. So I think that's what I have to say about AI. Hopefully it's valid and hopefully it's useful to a lot of younger students and maybe young professionals alike who are trying to get into this field or learn more about this field, basically. And as I said, if anyone has more questions, they can contact me on Instagram. I'll be happy to answer questions.
I'll be honest, Jamie, I didn't realize it was you until I saw it. Oh, yeah. Then I kind of looked on LinkedIn and saw you posting it. And
I've had several people contact me and hey, man, this is really cool. And then they're like, some people are like, oh, it's you. I'm like, yeah, it's me. Because it's kind of like a bit like an alias. That's why eventually I started to put my name, because before I didn't have my name. Yeah, and then they were like, oh, it's you. And then I even meet people who join my company. And they're like, for a while, they're like, are you that guy? I'm like, yeah, that's me. Yeah. Not that it's fame or anything, nothing like that. It's just I think
you see,
it's such a tight knit
the cool stuff on Instagram.
It's just a very small community of designers, so I think it's very easy for people to see and to know and this kind of stuff. So